Good morning. Oh, that was pretty good. Spring has sprung. All right. Welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Lynn Madsen. I will be your celebrant this morning, and Rhonnie Craven is our worship leader. We are a faith that believes in radical hospitality. So if you are a visitor, we are so glad you're here. We welcome every person of goodwill. Whatever your beliefs or faith, they enrich our community. How you love, whom you love, where you come from, if those are not familiar to us, we take that as an opportunity to learn. And we invite you all to continue our communion with conversation and refreshments following the service, both here and on Zoom. For the folks on Zoom, you'll find the order of service and the lyrics for the songs in the chat. And now, if everyone will please turn around and wave to all of the people on Zoom in the camera. Okay. And also take a moment to greet those people sitting around you, especially people you might not know well. We have a couple of announcements this morning. Every Sunday before the service and after the service, you can read the announcements in the loop, see the announcements on the loop on the screen, or you can check the email, which if you are on our mailing list, you will get every week. Tuesday, March 4th for democracy. There will be a rally Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. at Memorial Park. We're hoping to look, yes. A little something we can do. Also, Kathy has an announcement.
So this is just a quick early bird announcement. We're having our stewardship dinner on April 19th. It's a Saturday night, and I'm going to be the recruiter of entertainment. So if you are interested, we are excited to have you to contribute, and just contact me. I'll make some announcements later on too, but I just wanted to put the little seed out there to see what grows. Okay.
Our fellowship is located on the ancestral homeland of the Pasquosa. For thousands of years, the Pasquosa have lived here, making a vibrant way of life and a rich culture from the land, the beings, and the human neighbors with whom they shared it. Here is a poem from the Oglala poet Lele Long Soldier, inspired by Hesapa, the Black Hills, and the loss of her people, culture, and language. But is the small way to begin. But I could not, as I am limited to a few words at command, such as Wandly. This was how I wanted to begin, with the little I know, but could not. Because this Wandly, this eagle of my imagining, is not spotted, bald, or even a nest eagle. It is gold. It is gold, though by definition, not ever the great golden eagle. Much as the gold by no mistake, it's not ground gold, man gold, or nugget. But here it is the gold of light and wing together. Wings that do not close, but in expanse angle up slightly, plunge with muscle and stout head somewhere between my uncle, my son, my father, my brother. But I failed to begin there with this expanse, much as I failed to start with the great point in question. The great point in question. There in muscle, in high inner flight, always in the plunge, we fear for the falling. We buckle to wonder, what man is expendable? The Pasquosa still live here, still practice their cultural traditions, are still trying to form healthy, respectful relationships with the dominant culture, and are still working to have their rights restored and their treaty obligations fulfilled. We have said we are going to do our part to support them. Now, let us rise in body and spirit and sing our opening song, If Not Now, by Carrie Newcomer.
I'd like to open our service today with these words from Rebecca Savage. Justice is our prayer. We gather together today with sacred intention to declare that justice is our prayer. We affirm in covenant with the beloved community that this is possible. Not here, not quite yet. The seeds have been planted time and time again. And we remember all those who went before us who made beloved community a dream that could be realized. Justice is our prayer. May our time of worship service together continue to water the budding trees of our diverse interdependence. May our time of worship give air and nourishment to the parts of our collective spirits that need to grow and thrive, that embrace equity as a known way of being. Justice is our prayer. We affirm in covenant with the beloved community that this is possible, and may it be so. The chalice and flame symbolize our congregation gathered in principle and faith. If you at home have your chalice with you, or as Reverend Sola used to say, if you don't have one, just cup your hands together and imagine a flame. Please join us now in lighting it. Here in the sanctuary, we will speak these lighting words by Deborah Falk in unison. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of liberal faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that envisions a world flourishing with equality for all her people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all of this within each of us. And now, I'm hoping there's some children here. I saw Claudia come in. Where are you, Claudia? Would you want to come up front and hear a story about a kitten? Oh, but wait. I made a mistake. This story is not about a kitten. It's not. This is written by Randall Day, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Save, and Carson Ellis. Thank you. Thanks to Lynn who picked the book and for letting me read it. Now, shall we form our arch and sing our child to class? Now go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share. Now go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share.
What a lovely story. And what a lovely sentiment, Rhonnie, for today, fear of others in this time. We have a lot of fear. Hafez, one of my very favorite poets, has a little something to say about it. Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions, for your mother and my mother were friends. I know the innkeeper in this part of the universe. Get some rest tonight. Come to my verse tomorrow. We'll go speak to the friend together. I should not make any promises right now, but I know if you pray, somewhere in this world, something good will happen. God wants to see more love and playfulness in your eyes, for that is your greatest gift to him. Your soul and my soul once sat together in the beloved's womb, playing footsie. Your heart and my heart are very, very old friends. And this by Robin Wall Kimmerer from her book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Immigrants cannot by definition be indigenous. Indigenous is a birthright word. No amount of time or caring changes history or substitutes for soul-deep fusion with the land. Following Nana Bojo's footsteps doesn't guarantee transformation of second man to first. But if people do not feel indigenous, can they nevertheless enter into that deep reciprocity that renews the world? Is this something that can be learned? Where are the teachers? I'm remembering the words of Elder Henry Lickers. You know, they came here thinking they'd get rich by working on the land. So they dug their mines, cut down the trees. But the land is the one with the power. While they were working the land was working on them, teaching them.
There we go. So this is a time in our service when we share and honor things that are important to us, things that have affected us, and those things that we have permission to share. So one of the things I wanted to mention. That song right there could be today's sermon. So as we go through the values that the UUA has adopted, each month we are focusing on a new one, and this month the value is equity. And the definition from the UUA is we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. So I went to the UUA and got more, just looked around, and I found this quote from Reverend Dr. Prudhomme, if I'm saying it correctly, who offers the following theological reflection from the perspective of her layered identities as white, American, cisgender, lesbian, upper middle class, woman, mother, daughter, Unitarian Universalist minister, theologian, and educator who does not currently have a disability. We carry forth the theological lineage that understands it is our responsibility to dismantle the human-made systems of oppression and exploitation that cause harm to life and inhibit the full flourishing of every person. We do this toward creating just, compassionate, and sustainable communities where all can thrive, end quote. So during our worship team meeting, when I volunteered to speak on this subject today, I was really excited because it really speaks to my passions. I want things to be fair for everyone. But then dread set in, and I mean serious dread. Where do I go with this? What aspect of inequity did I want to address? Do I speak about the disparity, both financial and professional, between men and women? Do I speak about Indigenous rights, the unfair distribution of wealth, the lack of services for mentally ill and unhoused people, our failing healthcare system, immigration, whatever? So my gerbil brain froze for a moment and then went back and forth on all these topics, which all deserve their own space. I did lean toward immigration. And oddly, part of the ideas for this were sparked. The Library and Indigenous Rights and Reparations Foundation coordinated a book group, reading the book Braiding Sweetgrass, which I had had for years and had not completed. That spoke to me so much about how many passages in that book spoke about how we treat each other in our society. So I'm going to give you a little short bio. I know you want to hear about me. I was raised here in Wenatchee, born in Wenatchee, lived here almost my whole life. And I never saw a person of color growing up. I think now, and I look back at my high school classmates, I think there were some, but we didn't talk about it back then. We were so naive, and this was a fairly sheltered community, I think. There was one classmate that was Native, and he was in my graduating class, and my parents were terrified when he asked me out on a date. What would people think of me? My dad, mostly. And I thought it was ironic because actually my mother had some Native heritage, but somehow that was just so frightening for them that people would think poorly of me. So this was the climate I was raised in. At the time, we had migrants from Mexico that came and picked fruit and did labor, but left. They were on a circuit, like the previous people from the South did the same thing. So that was not really anybody in my community. I saw my very first Black person at Wenatchee Valley College. Again, very sheltered. So my exposure to people of the others, and I'm using this others, every time you hear me say it, it's in quotes, I want you to know. During my telephone operator years, and I'm going back to old days when the only way you could call long distance was call us. And we had many Spanish-speaking callers calling home. And I can remember people saying, well, why don't they learn English? Well, wait a minute. They were actually trying. We were the ones that were not trying. And that really bothered me. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know where it happened, but that's just how I felt. Probably because my parents were conservative. I'm a little bit of a rebel and stubborn. So if you tell me I can't do something, I will go out and do it. During my children's growing up in Aniat, they had many Spanish-speaking friends, many immigrants from Mexico. And I can remember one time my daughter was young. She reminded me of this just recently. We were driving somewhere and she said, Mom, those kids just talk so loud and so fast. And I just jumped on her. And I don't know where that came from, but I said, that's their culture and we just have to accept that that's how they are. You know, it's not up to us to judge. Just the tiniest little beginning of my journey into, I don't know, learning more. I'm not any paragon of virtue. I have my own implicit biases. We're raised with them. We're raised in a racist culture. So we have to work hard. But joining book groups, talking with people, dealing with more and more. When I worked at the library, we had a lot of Spanish-speaking people, and there was a great amount of communication able to happen if you were willing to listen and do a lot of And then the kids, of course, helped. I don't know how I got from these memories to thinking about immigration. I think the germ of this talk sprouted from a forum we had here after one of our Share the Plate services, and we had people from Hand in Hand, Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, I know somebody else, Cafe, and there were 2 or 3 people here who were going through the process of becoming citizens, and they were in tears. And that was when I had somehow no idea how difficult and expensive it was. It's just such a huge burden. So I'm astounded that we're so afraid of these immigrants. What is it? I don't know what it is about seeing others that don't fit into our preconceived notion of how people should act or dress, speak, live, look. It seems to manifest in some kind of self-righteous belief that we have ours, so we need to protect it at all costs. It's so contradictory because we are all descended from immigrants. So I found a book called America for Americans, A History of Xenophobia in the United States, and I'm going to quote from that book. Xenophobia doesn't just reveal itself through a bigoted relative who is saying stuff about the Mexicans at Thanksgiving dinner. Please remember I'm using quotes, not my own words. Xenophobia is a form of racism that has embedded in our laws. She says in an interview, one of the most important things about xenophobia is that it's shape-shifting, wily thing, just like racism. You think it's gone away, and it comes back. It evolves so that even though one immigrant group finally gains acceptance, it can easily be applied to another. And sometimes that group that just made it can be very active in leading the charge against others. So unfortunately, this is the way in which racism and our racial hierarchy are at work in the United States, end quote. She also goes on to say it's treated as a zero-sum game. New immigration is a threat to us already here. The dividing line between good and bad has been marked by religion, national origin, class, gender, and sexual orientation, but especially race. And I experienced an example of this recently in a group of us were sitting around talking, and a woman who is of Mexican descent lives part-time in Texas and part-time here. And she said, I don't know how we got on the topic, because really we're just supposed to be sitting there and knitting, but she said, well, I know a lot of these young girls that are pregnant and they just come across the border so they can have babies that'll be citizens. If you know me well, I'm not very tactful. And I just said, well, I don't care. I don't care, because she made it sound like thousands and millions. She might know 3. Who knows? I just said, I don't care. Who are we if we don't want babies to have a better life? Do we not have enough to share? Anyway, and that's nothing compared to what people experience every day. Where does this prejudice come from against others? I don't know all the answers, but I think it comes down to fear. Again, we have ours and we don't want anybody else to have it. Somebody told me that anger was mainly fear-based, and I think prejudice can be too. Depending on where you were raised and the community surrounding you, that fear can manifest it in many levels. Again, growing up in Wenatchee, I didn't have examples of racial diversity. Some cities and communities would have been exposed to much more severe cases. Generational attitudes also play a part. I'm going to refer back to Erica Lee, where she talks about it as a zero-sum situation, and we have to hang on to what we have because, boy, if another group gets theirs, we won't have as much. There are, and as she says, there are good immigrants and bad immigrants who are a threat to us. I just don't get it. So recently, we have personal experiences also that influence this. And recently, Hideo shared the most touching story about his family during World War II and the Japanese Americans who were sent to camps because of fear. My family's of German descent, and in some places, the Germans were described as swarthy. Do I look swarthy? They were viewed with suspicion, even though they had nothing to do with Hitler and the Nazi regime. Every group of immigrants has been through their own experience of being treated badly. And what makes our fear of the current immigrants from Mexico different? This is something I learned at the library, talking with people and asking questions. And there were so many questions about when will the Mexican, again, quotes, learn to speak English? Well, I think our European immigrants came in a shortened period in relative terms to the immigration that we're seeing now. And the parents would come and maybe they didn't learn English, but their children did, and it wasn't a constant flow. Where with immigrants from Mexico, there is a constant flow, new families coming all the time seeking a better life. Their children, again, are learning English, but the perception is that nobody was learning English. And so the Mexican patrons that I had, the children that I worked with, really helped open my eyes. Another odd thing that we would hear is the newly arrived people from Mexico would always ask, is the library free? Do I have to pay something? And with some of my coworkers, that was perceived as, I'm sorry, I'm using this language purposely, but it's not my own. They just want something for free. Again, I ask questions from my patrons. In Mexico, you have to pay to check out a book. That's where that question was coming from, but no one bothered to find out. So, anyway, so many perceptions, so many comments are made. Again, so many examples that I could share. I want to go on with a little bit of why, I don't know why, I have questions. I'm supposed to bring this to a conclusion with some answers, and I have none. I think I'm mostly preaching to the choir here, but I don't have all the answers either. But I do want to read some information of world religions. And I borrowed this from the Center for Religious Life at Smith College. So Christians have a clear directive. Thus said the Lord of hosts, render true judgments, show kindness and mercy to one another. Do not oppress the widow, the orphan, the alien, or the poor, and do not devise evil in your hearts against one another. And I looked it up how many times welcoming strangers was mentioned in the Bible. There was not a number for the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, at least 37 times. In the Baha'i faith, when you meet a stranger, say, "Yonder is coming to me a letter sent by God. The outside of the envelope may be dirty and torn and broken, but if we could open the envelope of the life that comes before us and look within and learn to read the writing, we would find in every human soul which crosses our threshold or which is yonder over the man-made." Okay, I lost my page. Sorry. Okay, paganism also has a strong tradition of hospitality across many cultures. It is expected that any traveler be offered food and water, a warm hearth, and a place to sleep. There are many tales of gods and goddesses traveling in the guise of mortals, bestowing generous gifts upon those who offer hospitality, and bringing their wrath down upon those who slighted them. But pagan hospitality is not just fear of vengeance, it is a practical exchange, expecting the guests to treat their host with respect and offer gifts when they can, with the awareness that today's host might be tomorrow's traveler. Hinduism and Buddhism both have highly structured rituals of hospitality. Hosting strangers and guests alike is one of the 5 central duties of a Hindu homeowner. The 5-fold offering of Buddhism similarly lays out the duty to provide food, a place to stay, and aid to all guests. Islam, likewise, enjoys unconditional hospitality from its followers. In fact, a handful of sins which will result in Allah overlooking someone on the day of resurrection, one sin is denying surplus water to travelers. So there you have it. There's our directive, whatever you believe. So when I started writing this, I thought I would somehow magically come to be able to describe the causes and why the fear of the immigrant is perpetuated, but I don't have any answers. I don't have any answers for anyone. In our Share the Pulpit class, we're supposed to bring this out with a conclusion. But I'm more befuddled than when I started because I don't understand it. I admit I have my own biases that I was raised with that I have to confront all the time. So I will continue to examine myself for that. I know that we have many people in our fellowship that are working hard. We have people involved in Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice. We have people who have committed to being part of a rapid response to protect immigrants. We have a presence in Interfaith Justice Coalition, and there's a group from CUF teaching ESL at Cafe. And there are more people doing things that I don't know about, but I think we can do more and put ourselves more on the line to address our own prejudices and even further, speak out in the face of prejudice of others. We owe it to ourselves and we owe it to the world to do better.
Thank you, Rhonnie. The offering is an ancient element of worship. Giving, regardless of amount, is a spiritual practice that expresses our thankfulness and our generosity. And in this time, we may have to take up some space out of our own pockets that we had been contributing in taxes as those monies get constrained at the government level. Joyfully sharing our gifts and strengths in service to the greater good is one way we create the beloved community. We live these values in abundance, and we will now receive the offering.
I want to close with these words by Mary Sheldon. We cannot know what all the world may bring, and would we heed the prophecy if we could? Bright flame awake, send forth your shining light beyond this year into the many coming. Show us the ways of love and help and care, of justice, mercy, and equality. Illuminate unto the generations, show to the world a beacon of safe harbor. Help us to find the kindred warmth within us and among us to help make it so.
And now, as we extinguish our chalice, please join me in saying these words by Rebecca Savage, printed in your order of service or on the screen. We have come to the end of our service, but not our calling in the world. We close our time together with the humble reminder that justice and equity are our spiritual practices to embrace. Each day, every day, We are blessed to be the embodiment of what is possible. When justice and equity ground us in all that we do, may we go forth with the light and warmth of our chalice in our hearts until we are together again. And if you will form a circle around the outside, it's our custom to hold hands or stand shoulder to shoulder while we sing our final song. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.